I think being a good writer means knowing yourself really well because our society tends to want to anesthetize the pain. But I believe that as a writer, we need to move toward the pain and mine the pain, access it, mold it, and try to make sense of it because it will help us become better people. It'll be freeing. It'll bear witness to what has gone on. It will resonate with other people who have also experienced pain and loss.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Authors on Mission podcast. Here's a question for you today. What happens when a seasoned journalist who's covered presidents and witnessed democracy's inner workings decides to imagine its destruction? Today's guest spent 45 years in the newsroom, including time as a White House correspondent and CNN editor, before channeling his insider knowledge into spine-chilling political thrillers. But this isn't just another author interview. It's a conversation with someone who's lived through personal tragedy, professional transformation, and emerged as a storyteller and a guide for others. So please welcome John DeDakis, who is here to talk about enemies domestic and some amazing writing tips for us today. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Danielle. It's good to be here.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. It's an honor to have you. You have some incredible experiences under your belt. And from what I was able to look through of Enemies Domestic, it's an incredible book, and I'm really excited to dive into it. But before we do, though, I'm wondering if you want to shed a little bit light on your experiences here that led to writing the book. How exactly did your experiences inspire the series, and is anything related to true events?
Well, let's see. The series actually got started 20 years ago. This is book 6 in the series, although you don't have to read it in order. I write as a 20-something young woman, and the series begins when she discovers the body of the aunt who raised her from infancy, and she ends up on a quest to try to find out why her aunt died. And that led her to go into journalism. And so all 6 books have a journalism backdrop. And by the time we get to Enemies Domestic, Lark has been a cops and courts reporter. She's been a White House correspondent. And at the beginning of Enemies Domestic, she is White House press secretary. She's pregnant. She's ambivalent about becoming a single mom. Abortion is a crime, and the first question she's asked in the White House briefing comes from a Tucker Carlson type who asks, "Are you or are you not planning to abort your unborn child?" And that leads to Lark being put in the crosshairs of the abortion debate. And it's a highly toxic and polarized political fishbowl that she's trying to navigate at the same time that a dictator becomes president.
Wow. Well, that is definitely a jam-packed book there. It's interesting because you take such, I guess you could say, prevalent topics nowadays and turn it into a thriller here. So it's very cool to see that you're playing around with what's going on today, but also turning it into, a very compelling story with very, likable characters and realistic events. So really well done.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering, what kind of research goes into this? It's very realistic. Is it mainly from your experiences, or is there a process that you go through to fact check and so on and so forth? What's that like for you?
Well, the great thing about writing fiction is you get to make it up.
Mm.
And any writer will tell you that you write what you know. So I think most writers, especially myself included, draw from personal experience. I did cover the White House for 3 years when Reagan was president, and and so I draw on that experience. I was a political science minor, worked in journalism for 45 years. So a lot of personal experience goes into that.
Understood. Right. Okay. So there's always that common topic, write what you know. So it's good to know that you employed that in your book. So I guess my whole question then is also, I mean, this does feature a military coup in modern America. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's a realistic scenario, or is it kind of just imagination based on your experiences as well?
Well, I think to a certain extent, you have to use your
Not to get too
imagination.
political either, but
Well, you have to use your imagination to come up with, possible scenarios that could happen. And so I've latched onto one. It's never happened in this country. It's not to say that it couldn't, but I'd like to think it's far-fetched. But every day things seem more and more like, we could be heading in that direction. So, um, yeah, it's not out of the question. It is possible.
yeah, yeah. So it's definitely a hot topic these days, everybody listening today. So all the more reason to dive in and explore the fictionalized versions and tales and related to these real life events. I mean, what better than former CNN editor, right, to relay this sort of information?
Oh, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, all that being said, though, I'd love to transition a little bit into the writing process
Sure.
itself. I mean, why a female protagonist? Like, what was the choice in creating her, and do you encounter any challenges in writing in that female voice?
That's an excellent question. And the interesting thing is that writing a female protagonist was not a calculated thing. There are actually two reasons I write as a woman. One is superficial, one is much deeper. When I first started writing my first novel, Fast Track, someone suggested that I should write in a way that stretches who I am. Never been a woman, at least not in this life. So I gave it a try and I discovered that emotions are not gender specific. We all have the exact same emotions. It's just that in my experience, the women in my life are more willing to share their emotions and they're more articulate about their emotions. So writing as a woman became kind of fun. And at the same time I was doing it, I was working at CNN, surrounded by young women in their early to mid 20s who were either interns or new hires. And they would tell me their stories about their boyfriends, their families, their careers. And I would ask them questions about what it's like to be a woman. And I learned a lot by listening. And just to give you one quick example, there was one woman, an anchor I worked with, gorgeous, and I asked her, "What's it like for guys to come on to you all the time?" And she said, "I can determine in the first 20 seconds if I'm safe. I never have to worry about being safe in a conversation." And that's when I realized that being a woman is playing defense. And so
Mm.
that's just one little thing I picked up. And so a lot of these women that I worked with became my beta readers. They would read early chapters, early drafts of the novel to let me know if I'm getting it right or if I'm not getting it right, what I needed to do to fix it. The deeper reason I write as a woman, or I realize that I write as a woman, is that my sister took her life in 1980, carbon monoxide poisoning. I was on the scene that day and I wrote the very first chapter of Fast Track is that scene. It's ripped from reality. And it was a
Wow.
catharsis to be able to write, but I didn't go through any grief counseling at the time. That came much later in 2011 after my son died of a heroin overdose. And so I went through grief counseling, and one of the things I discovered is, and I already knew this as a writer, that writing is like dipping a straw into your subconscious. And when you ask questions, what if this and how about that? And, when you ask those questions, it's like taking a sip out of your subconscious and things just go through your fingers and onto the page. It's spooky. And after I went through grief counseling, they asked me to give a speech at a banquet, a fundraising banquet for the Grief Counseling Center. And as I was writing the speech, I realized the deeper reason I write as a woman is to create a character I wish my sister had allowed herself to become, because she was brilliant. She could have been a concert pianist. She could have been a surgeon. But her boyfriend said, "What would it look like, a football coach married to a surgeon?" And one by one, she gave up her dreams until 20 years later, she took her life. And so I wrote a character who doesn't let a guy define who she is. She still falls for the bad boys, but, Lark, my protagonist, just has a little more spine, I guess you could say.
Right. Well, wow, thank you for sharing that personal story.
Sure.
I'm so sorry to hear about your family members and these devastating acts, but
Thank you.
you know what, at the end of the day, it inspired what ended up being the series. So it's first off just remarkable, and thank you for sharing that. But hey,
Sure.
every great writing does come from that emotional connection to it. So
Thank you. Yeah, it's true. I think everybody has grief and loss, whether it's, not just the loss of a loved one, but, a pet, a job, relationships, innocence, health, all of those things. I don't think you can go through life without experiencing deep emotional pain.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. But again, yeah, it really does add depth to the characters and your perspectives on them and so on and so forth. And one thing that I would like to kind of go back to, and what you began the conversation with mentioning, is that you actually had your female coworkers beta read the manuscript, which
Right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of authors think, I'm just going to write my book. No one else has to read it. Let me get it published, right? But the beta reading process is such an important part. It offers you insights, revisions. I wonder if you'd like to shine a little bit of light about that process and also the fact that it actually went through 14 different revisions, at least the first novel did.
Right.
So, yeah, speak a little bit on that revising and editing process for us.
That's really an important subject to get onto because you're
Mhm.
right. A lot of wannabe writers, they agonize over that first draft and really, sweat blood, in order to get it onto the page. And so when it's done, it's like, well, whoa, it's great. And now I can let the world see it without realizing that the first draft is just the discovery draft. And you really need to get some people who can look at it objectively, to see if whatever you saw in your mind's eye actually made it to the page, because you're too close to it to be objective by the time you've, spent so many months and maybe even years working on it. And so it's definitely important to get critical feedback. Beta readers don't cost anything, but there comes a time where you need to be able to mold it and buff it and polish it and make it so that it's as good as you can make it, and then you bring in a professional, and then it's time to try to see if it's going to find a home.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I thank you for speaking on that. And would you say that it was a challenging process all in all, or was it, pretty much simple? I know sometimes people encounter conflicts with their editors. I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's never smooth sailing. I mean, I'm a firm believer in editors because they know what is good, they know how to fix things, and they can spot problems. And so I welcome, editorial oversight. I mean, that was part of what makes up good journalism, is that editor on your shoulder saying, "How did you know that's true?" And so that kind of feedback really was helpful in molding all of the books into something I'm proud of.
Yeah, definitely. So I completely agree there. And to all the listeners out there today who are also writing their books and wondering about that editing process, there you have it. It's important to go through that. Um, so now, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, has the shift from your former careers to writing, has that been a dramatic shift for you? Or do you find yourself kind of picking up on related skills going from, seeing an editor to writing now? And what's that like? Do you draw upon your past knowledge from that? Not exactly in experiences, but skill-wise for
Well,
writing?
there's really an overlap in terms of the skill set. Because when you're a journalist, you don't have the luxury of sitting there waiting for the muse to arrive. You're on deadline and you have to get it done on before it's ready. And you need to be efficient and succinct and all of that, which even if you're writing an 80,000 word novel, each sentence still needs to be clear and succinct. So
Mhm.
that's the overlap. I think probably the biggest transition was giving myself permission to make things up, because in journalism, unlike what some presidents will tell you, it is a firing offense to make things up. But in fiction, you get to make it up and make things work and imagine stuff and all of that. So there's a tremendous freedom that's involved in being a novelist.
Yeah, yeah, I could only imagine. And, it gives you just that creative leeway and that, you're building a whole world, you're building the characters. So I definitely see where you're going with that one.
Right.
So I guess preference-wise, you prefer the fiction writing now. I'm not sure if you're given a choice to which you had to commit to one or the other, it would be the
I would say I much prefer fiction now. I enjoy journalism, but journalism has changed tremendously since I've retired and even when I first started. And so, it's just chaos right now.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, I get what you're coming from there. And there's all different types of writing. So to the listeners out there, everyone, has their own niche and their own passion for a certain type. Speaking of types of writing, you also teach writing workshops, as I see. You've
Mhm.
been writing, using writing to heal from grief, which is perfect for you based on your experiences. I'm wondering if you can shine a little bit of light on that for us.
That's one of the things that has evolved. I long ago started teaching writing classes, starting with just how to write a novel, and then how to write a memoir, and so on. And then there are the finer points of writing, the how to write good dialogue and rewriting, buffing and polishing. And so, as I became more experienced as a novelist, I was also able to take what I learned through trial and error of writing and deconstruct it and help others to get their novels written. And then after my son died, then I added to that repertoire, being able to understand and deconstruct the grief process and see how writing can be therapeutic, how it can actually bring better healing. Because I think being a good writer means knowing yourself really well. And I think the better you know yourself as a person, the better you'll be as a writer, because our society tends to want to anesthetize the pain. But I believe that as a writer, we need to move toward the pain and mine the pain and access it and mold it and try to make sense of it, because it will help us become better people. It'll be freeing. It will also be, it'll bear witness to what has gone on, and it will resonate. If it's done well, it will resonate with other people who have also experienced pain and loss.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'm sure you've heard just tremendous feedback from the positive results based on this class. Was this the class that you mentioned you were teaching last night, actually, now that I'm thinking about it?
Well, let's see. I do a lot of online teaching now,
Ah,
and I'm teaching one class that is 6 weeks every Wednesday for 2 hours and 2 hours, and the class is called From Novice to Novelist. And so each Wednesday night we go into some detail about a different aspect of the creative process. Plus, people have a chance to share some of their writing as well. Plus, there are writing exercises, and I teach that class a lot. I'm going to be teaching it again at the Chautauqua Center or Institution in southwestern New York State. That'll be a week long immersive writing retreat. And then there are a lot of standalone classes that I do at writer centers and things like that, and writers conferences.
understood. Okay, yeah, well, very interesting to know. So, if anybody was interested in perhaps learning from you or just getting in touch and learning a little bit more about the series itself, what are the best links and ways to get connected?
Probably the best way is through my website, which is johndedakis.com, and I'll spell that for you because it's a tricky Greek name. John, D as in dog E, D as in dog A, Kis as in Sam, johndedakis.com.
Understood. Okay, well, very cool. We're going to put the links to that in the description box of this podcast today. But we're not quite done yet, John, because I also have a couple other questions for you. First off,
Sure.
I have to know, this book right here that we've been talking about today, it's not the last of this series, is it? I mean, there's got to be more coming, I'm sure.
I'm working on book 7. It's still in the early stages.
Mm.
Enemies Domestic, my wife and I worked on it together. We
Oh,
had, intense conversations about abortion. We came up with an idea, and then I would write, and then I'd take the pages up to Cindy, and she would give me critical feedback, constructive feedback, also very helpful. And then I would revise and move forward. And that worked so well because Enemies Domestic has been winning some awards this year. We're doing the same approach for book 7, which is still very much in its infancy.
okay, well, really cool. And I love that collaborative process too.
Yeah.
It's great to work with somebody on that. And I'm sure there was a lot of, arguments about plot points or stuff like that, but it's
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
very cool. Well, again, everybody, go to the links that in the description box to get in touch, and then you can stay up to date with the development of this next book in the series. But, that gives you plenty of time to catch up on my other ones too if you haven't began the series.
Oh yeah. I like the way you think.
Yeah, yeah, get started, everybody. So that being said, I'm wondering if you happen to have any other bits of advice for the aspiring writers out there, especially those who want to tackle political themes that you have. What's something that you wish that you knew when you first started that you know now?
I think I wish I had more courage. I think I
Mm.
listen to my fears a lot. And based on the conversations I have with my writing students, it is very easy to talk yourself out of pursuing writing because we're very good at being self-critical. There are people who are better than us and there are people who aren't as good as us. And I think that if you commit to trying to bring your writing to a professional level and going forward in spite of your fears, just getting better, I think that that will, in the long run, lead to some satisfaction in terms of being able to take something and get it onto the page and make it coherent and get it to a point where it actually resonates with other people. And it doesn't have to be about politics. It can be whatever you're interested in, whatever moves you as a person. That's what you would write about.
Yeah, yeah, well, there you go. Thank you for that. And everyone, that's a beautiful piece of advice, something we can all take with us today as the show ends and hold on to it as we begin our next writing steps. So thank you. John, this has been a really insightful conversation. I loved hearing about the book and your experiences and also the writing tips. It's been really wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Danielle. This has been fun.
Of course. And to everybody listening today, again, go check out Enemies Domestic along with the rest of the series. Some amazing stuff there. The links are in the description box. And, well, whether you're a writer seeking inspiration or a reader hungry for authentic political drama or just somebody navigating your own season of loss, John here offers everything in his repertoire. So go ahead and check out those links. So everyone, thank you and have an amazing day. And remember to keep writing, keep reading, and keep inspiring others because everyone has a story to tell. We'll see you next time, you guys.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.